The apartment was silent until Emma screamed, the sound tearing through the walls like glass breaking. She clutched her son Daniel tightly, her arms trembling as her eyes locked on Mark storming toward the door. Mark said, "You'll regret this." His voice cracked with rage, but his blurred outline in her mind was nothing compared to the betrayal etched into her heart. Daniel whimpered against her chest, his small hand clutching her shirt. Sirens wailed in the distance, echoing like an omen, their rhythm weaving into the pounding of her heart. Emma whispered, "I won't let him hurt us again." Her words were barely audible, more for herself than her child. The door slammed with a violent crash, the sound shaking the frame and rattling every fragile piece of her already broken world. The quiet that followed was suffocating, and in that hollow moment, Emma knew everything had changed forever. The silence pressed down like a weight. Emma sank onto the couch, her arms locked around Daniel, afraid that letting go meant losing him forever. Daniel said, "Mommy, is it my fault?" His small voice shattered her. Emma's breath caught, her heart twisting at the thought that he could carry guilt for sins that were not his. She whispered, "No, never. You're my reason for everything." The rain outside kept falling, the sirens fading into the distance, but inside the apartment, the air was heavy, thick with dread and broken promises. Emma's mind raced with images of courts, custody battles, and the endless fight she feared she was too weak to win. Yet in Daniel's trembling arms, she found a sliver of strength she didn't know she still had. The apartment door rattled with the echo of Mark's departure. Emma's chest rose and fell as though she had run miles. She whispered, "He won't take you, Daniel." Her words felt fragile, but they steadied her trembling heart. Daniel lifted his face, eyes wet but steady, and said, "You're not alone, Mommy." That single phrase stabbed and soothed at once. She kissed his forehead, tasting salt from his tears. The clock ticked loudly, each second reminding her that time was no longer her ally but her enemy. Emma thought of lawyers, fees, and threats she couldn't afford to ignore. The world was no longer safe. But in that moment, Emma promised herself she would rise no matter the cost. The night dragged on, the apartment walls closing in. Emma moved to the window, Daniel asleep on the couch beneath a blanket. Her hand pressed against the cold glass, raindrops running like tears. She whispered, "How much more can I endure?" The city lights blinked below, indifferent to her pain. A neighbor's laughter echoed faintly, mocking her silence. Her reflection stared back at her, tired eyes lined with grief, but still alive with fire. She remembered the promises Mark once made, the lies dressed as love. Emma said softly, "Never again." In that vow, a storm gathered within her, small but undeniable, waiting for the moment to break free. The storm outside began to calm, but inside Emma's chest the storm only grew louder. She sat beside Daniel, brushing strands of blonde hair from his forehead. She whispered, "You're my strength." Daniel stirred, mumbling words she couldn't catch. Emma leaned back, her body aching from tension, her eyes burning but refusing to close. She saw the future in fragments. The courtroom, Mark's sneer, her child's tears. Her resolve hardened as she whispered, "He'll never break us." Shadows moved across the room as headlights passed outside, reminding her that the world continued, uncaring. But here, in this fragile bubble, Emma drew her first breath of defiance, ready to face whatever came next. Morning light crept through thin curtains, casting pale streaks across Emma's weary face as she dressed for another long day. Daniel stirred sleepily, rubbing his eyes and whispering, "Do you have to go, Mommy?" Emma crouched beside him, brushing his hair back gently and saying, "I always come back. I always come back." Her voice carried both love and exhaustion. She tucked his blanket tighter, her chest aching at the thought of leaving him with the weight of last night still hanging in the air. The clock ticked louder than it should, reminding her of bills waiting and bosses who would not forgive lateness. Emma whispered, "One more day will be okay." In Daniel's fragile nod, she drew courage to face a world ready to break her again. Emma hurried through crowded streets, clutching her worn handbag as cold wind whipped at her face. Her breath came fast, not from the pace, but from the weight pressing on her chest. She thought of Daniel's words, of his fear, and she muttered, "I can't fail him." The office tower loomed above her, glass walls reflecting gray skies, a reminder of battles waiting inside. Co-workers barely glanced as she entered, her presence almost invisible. She forced a smile for the receptionist, but her eyes betrayed sleeplessness. Emma whispered to herself, "Just make it through today." The elevator doors closed, sealing her into the rhythm of survival she had mastered, even as her soul begged for rest. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above Emma's head as she typed at her desk, each keystroke echoing like a hammer in her skull. Papers piled around her, and her boss's sharp voice carried across the office, demanding deadlines she could barely meet. Emma's best friend Sarah leaned over the cubicle wall, her voice low and kind, "You look like you didn't sleep." Emma forced a smile, whispering, "Rough night." Sarah's concerned eyes lingered, but Emma quickly returned to her screen. The office clock dragged its hands slowly, each second a reminder of what waited at home, and what might be taken from her. Still, she kept working, survival stitched into her every move. The break room smelled of stale coffee and burnt toast. Emma sat at the small table, staring into her cup as if answers swirled inside. Sarah slid into the seat across from her and said gently, "You can't keep doing this alone." Emma's throat tightened, her eyes darting away. "I don't have a choice," she whispered. Sarah reached across, placing a hand over hers, steady and warm. The hum of conversation around them blurred, co-workers laughing. Yet, Emma felt as though the world had narrowed to this single fragile moment. Sarah said softly, "You're stronger than you think, but even the strongest need help." Emma's silence spoke louder than words, carrying both fear and the faintest spark of hope. Evening fell heavy as Emma walked home, the sky painted in bruised purples and fading gold. Streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows that mirrored her fatigue. Her shoes scuffed against the pavement, each step slower than the last. She clutched her coat tighter, whispering, "Almost there." The thought of Daniel waiting pulled her forward. Passing by shop windows, she caught glimpses of families laughing, couples holding hands, lives untouched by her storm. She turned away quickly, her chest tightening. At the corner of her street, the apartment building loomed, tired bricks catching the last glint of fading light. Emma straightened her shoulders and whispered, "Home, that's enough." Emma's hand shook as she sorted through the pile of unopened mail on the kitchen table, bills stacked like accusations. At the bottom, a white envelope marked with her name made her chest tighten. She tore it open, her eyes scanning the words until the letters blurred. Custody hearing. Mark had filed. The world tilted, her breath coming fast. Daniel ran into the kitchen, his small voice saying, "Mommy, why are you crying?" She hid the paper quickly, forcing a trembling smile. "Just tired," she whispered, though her body betrayed the lie. The sound of Daniel's laughter from the living room cut through the silence, a cruel reminder of what she stood to lose. The following morning, Emma sat across from Sarah in the cafe, the air thick with roasted coffee and quiet chatter. She pushed the custody papers across the table, her voice low and sharp. "He's trying to take Daniel." Sarah's face tightened, anger flashing in her eyes. "He can't win, not after what he's done." Emma gripped her cup, knuckles white, whispering, "The courts won't see what we've lived." Her words carried both fear and resignation. Sarah leaned forward, her tone fierce, "Then we'll make them see." For a moment, Emma let the warmth of Sarah's resolve seep into her, though her own doubts clawed at her chest like shadows that refused to lift. At work, Emma's phone buzzed with a message from Mark. His words burned, "You can't keep him from me." Her chest constricted as she locked the screen quickly. Across the room, her boss watched, frowning. He approached, voice curt, "If your personal life keeps interfering, we'll have to reconsider your position." Emma forced a nod, swallowing the protest rising in her throat. She returned to her desk, her hands trembling over the keyboard. The world blurred as the weight of two wars pressed down, one at home and one here. She whispered under her breath, "I can't lose both." The fluorescent lights above hummed mercilessly, making her isolation feel louder. That night, Emma sat on the couch with Daniel curled in her lap, the TV playing softly but unheard. His head rested against her chest, the rise and fall of his breath soothing her ragged thoughts. She whispered, "I'll keep you safe," though the words tasted like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Daniel stirred, looking up with sleepy eyes. "I trust you, Mommy." His innocence sliced through her doubts. Emma kissed his forehead, her eyes closing briefly, letting the warmth of him anchor her. But when she opened them, the shadows of the apartment pressed closer, whispering of battles yet to come. The phone rang late, its shrill tone cutting the silence. Emma answered hesitantly, Sarah's voice urgent on the other end. "I need to tell you something. About Mark." Emma's grip on the phone tightened. "What do you mean?" Sarah's pause dragged heavy before she said, "He wasn't alone in this. Someone close to you knew." Emma's stomach dropped, her heart hammering in her ears. "Who?" she demanded, voice breaking. Sarah hesitated. "I'm not sure yet, but I'll find out." The line clicked silent, leaving Emma staring at the shadows on her wall. Betrayal was no longer behind her. It was inside her circle. The landlord's knock echoed through the apartment, steady and merciless. Emma opened the door, forcing a weak smile. He handed her a notice, voice flat, "Rent is overdue. 1 more week, then I have no choice." Her throat tightened as she whispered, "I'll find a way." Daniel peeked from behind the couch, eyes wide with worry. The landlord left without another word, his footsteps heavy down the hall. Emma closed the door slowly, leaning her forehead against the wood. Her chest ached as the weight of bills, custody papers, and now eviction pressed down. She whispered to herself, not in front of him, "Don't break here." At the courthouse waiting area, Emma sat stiff in a plastic chair, Daniel's small hand clutching hers. A social worker stood before her, clipboard in hand, eyes cool and assessing. "We'll be evaluating your ability to provide stability," the woman said. Emma nodded, though her stomach churned. She whispered, "I've done everything for him." Daniel leaned against her shoulder, too young to understand the judgment hanging in the air. The room buzzed with murmurs, but Emma felt only the pounding of her heart. She stared at the tiled floor, silently begging for strength. Every word spoken here could shatter her fragile world. Emma sat across from the lawyer she could barely afford, his suit immaculate, his eyes sharp. He tapped the custody papers and said, "Mark has resources. If we fight, it will be long and costly." Emma's stomach twisted. "I don't have money," she whispered, voice breaking. The lawyer's sigh was heavy, yet not unkind. "If you want to keep your son, you'll need to find a way." Daniel's smile from the photo on her phone flashed in her mind, anchoring her resolve. She nodded slowly. "Then I will," she said, even as fear burned her throat. That night, Emma stood in the kitchen, staring at the nearly empty fridge. The hum of its motor filled the silence. She whispered, "How do I stretch nothing into something?" Daniel patted in quietly, rubbing his eyes. "I'm hungry." Emma forced a smile, pulling together scraps for a meal. "I'll make your favorite," she said, though it wasn't true. He watched her, too perceptive for his age, and said softly, "You don't eat enough." The words pierced her deeper than hunger. She kissed his hair and whispered, "I'm fine." But, inside, she was unraveling, thread by fragile thread. Emma sat on the bathroom floor, the hum of pipes filling the silence. She pressed her palms to her eyes, muffling the sobs she couldn't hold back anymore. Daniel's laughter echoed faintly from the living room, a sound both healing and unbearable. She whispered, "He can't see me like this." Her reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink showed a woman worn, but not broken. She lifted her head, wiping tears away with the back of her hand. "I will not give up," she said aloud, as if daring the world to challenge her. The words felt like a fragile shield, but for now, they held. The knock at the door was hesitant, unlike the landlord's sharp demand. Emma opened it, surprised to find a woman standing there, older, familiar in a way that stole her breath. "Aunt Claire," Emma whispered, disbelief shaking her voice. Claire's eyes softened, lines etched with years. I heard what's happening. I couldn't stay away anymore. Emma's chest tightened, memories flooding of childhood warmth turned to silence after betrayal fractured the family. Daniel peeked out, curiosity in his wide eyes. Who is she, Mommy? Emma's voice trembled, family, though the word felt both foreign and fragile. The air shifted, heavy with history, and with it, the promise of secrets yet to be unearthed. The three sat in the living room, the silence thick until Claire spoke. Mark isn't working alone. Emma's heart raced, her hands clenching the fabric of the couch. What do you know? She demanded. Claire's voice was calm but steady. He's been in contact with your father. Emma froze, the words slicing her like a blade. Her father's absence was an old wound, one she thought buried. Daniel shifted on her lap, sensing her tension. Emma whispered, Why now? Why would you tell me this? Claire's eyes glistened. Because you deserve the truth, even if it hurts. Shadows deepened in the room, as if echoing the weight of secrets long hidden. Emma's voice trembled as she stood, pacing the room. He abandoned us. He left Mom and me with nothing. Why would he come back now? Claire's voice was low, firm. Because Mark offered him leverage. He thinks he can win custody with your father's testimony. Emma's knees weakened, and she braced herself against the wall. Daniel whispered, Mommy? She turned, forcing a smile for him, though her eyes betrayed despair. Claire rose, her hand hovering before gently resting on Emma's shoulder. You're not alone anymore. For the first time in years, Emma felt the faint spark of shared strength, though tangled in betrayal. Later, Emma sat at the kitchen table with Claire, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Why now? Why after all these years? Emma asked, her voice sharp. Claire's eyes lowered. Because I made mistakes. I stayed away when I should fought for you. Emma clenched her jaw, anger and sorrow colliding inside. Claire reached across the table, her hand trembling. Let me help you now. Emma stared at their hands, torn between resentment and the desperate need for an ally. Daniel's quiet footsteps padded into the room, his small voice cutting the tension. Can she stay, Mommy? That night, Emma lay awake, Daniel asleep beside her. Claire's words replayed in her mind like echoes she couldn't silence. Trusting her meant reopening wounds she had fought to bury. Yet the thought of facing Mark and her father alone was unbearable. She turned to Daniel, brushing his hair gently, whispering, I'll do whatever it takes. The shadows stretched long across the ceiling, reminding her that choices came with costs. Somewhere in the apartment, Claire shifted, a quiet presence that was both comfort and question. Emma closed her eyes, her heart whispering one truth. The fight had only just begun. The courthouse doors loomed above Emma, their weight heavier than stone. She clutched Daniel's small hand, her knuckles pale, her chest rising with shallow breaths. Claire whispered, You don't walk alone today. Emma nodded, though fear clawed at her ribs. Inside, Mark waited, sharp in a suit, his smirk dripping with confidence. His lawyer shuffled papers with cold precision. Emma's lawyer whispered, Stay steady. Truth is our weapon. She pulled Daniel closer, whispering, Whatever happens, I love you. His tiny nod was a spark in her darkness. As the gavel echoed in the courtroom, silence fell. The battle had begun. Inside the courtroom, Emma sat at the wooden table, her hands folded tightly to still their shaking. Mark leaned back across from her, confidence radiating. His lawyer declared, She cannot provide stability. The words cut like knives. Emma's lawyer rose, firm and calm. We will prove otherwise. Daniel sat quietly beside Claire on the bench, his wide eyes watching everything. Emma whispered to herself, For him. The judge's gavel struck, his voice commanding order. Every glance, every word felt like a weapon. Emma's heart thundered as she realized that her love was not only on trial, her very life was. Mark took the stand, his voice smooth but venomous. She's unstable, unfit, consumed by her own failures. Emma's fists tightened in her lap, nails digging into skin. Her lawyer rose, cross-examining sharply. Is it true you abandoned them for years? Mark's smirk faltered. The room stirred with whispers. Emma's breath caught, eyes flicking to Daniel. His small hands gripped Claire's tightly, silently begging for strength. Mark's mask cracked, his anger slipping through his words. The truth seeped into the cracks, and Emma felt the faintest surge of hope. But fear still pulsed. One wrong move and everything could collapse. Emma took the stand, her palms damp against the wood. The courtroom hushed as she spoke, her voice steady despite the storm inside. I've worked every day to give my son a life, even when there was nothing left for me. Tears welled, but she didn't break. Mark's lawyer pressed coldly. Do you deny your struggles with money and stability? Emma inhaled, then answered, I don't deny the struggle. I deny the idea it makes me unfit. Struggle is what made me stronger. Her words carried, echoing, in the still room. She glanced at Daniel, whose small nod filled her heart with fire. The tension broke when Claire rose unexpectedly, her voice shaking. I cannot stay silent. Mark has manipulated Emma's father into siding with him. I have proof. Gasps rippled through the room. Documents were handed to the judge, his eyes narrowing as he read. Mark's face drained of color, his composure crumbling. Emma's breath hitched, relief and terror colliding. Daniel's small voice broke the silence. Please don't take me from Mommy. The judge's gavel struck hard, demanding order, but the truth was out. Emma's shame, her scars, her fight, all laid bare. And for the first time, it felt like victory might be possible. The gavel fell, and silence swallowed the courtroom. The judge's voice carried, custody awarded to Emma Hayes. Emma's breath stopped, her heart slamming against her ribs. She blinked hard, disbelief flooding her eyes. Mark's chair scraped back, his fury unmasked, but no words came. Daniel leapt into her arms, whispering, We won, Mommy. She held him tight, trembling as tears fell freely. Claire's hand squeezed her shoulder, anchoring her in the moment. Emma whispered, It's over, though her voice cracked with both relief and sorrow. Victory was hers, but the weight of scars lingered, etched deep in every breath she took. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter but fragile. Emma held Daniel's hand as reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. Questions shouted, voices sharp, but Emma kept her gaze steady ahead. Claire whispered, Ignore them, walk tall. Emma squeezed Daniel's hand tighter, whispering to him, We're going home. Daniel's small smile broke through the chaos, a beacon in the storm. The city bustled on, indifferent, but for Emma every step down those courthouse stairs was a declaration. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was choosing freedom. And though shadows trailed her, they no longer defined her. Back in the apartment, Emma stood in the doorway, surveying the quiet space that once felt like a cage. Daniel dropped his backpack and raced to his toys, laughter filling the room. Emma exhaled deeply, the sound like a release of years. She touched the cracked photo frame on the wall, the one that held their broken past, and set it face down. Claire watched silently from the kitchen, eyes soft with understanding. Emma whispered, This is our fresh start. Her words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of battles fought and won. For the first time, the apartment felt like a home. Night settled gently, the rain replaced by a quiet breeze through the cracked window. Emma sat at the table, bills still stacked, but they no longer felt like chains. Claire brewed tea, her movements calm. You did it, Claire said softly. Emma shook her head. We did it. Daniel padded in with his blanket, climbing into her lap, his small head resting against her chest. Emma kissed the crown of his hair, whispering, We're safe now. Claire's eyes glistened, though she turned away to hide it. The room was simple, worn, but filled with something Emma had thought lost, hope. The apartment was still, save for Daniel's soft breathing in the next room. Emma stood at the window, moonlight washing her face silver. She placed her hand on Daniel's bedroom door, whispering, We'll be okay. The world outside sparkled faintly, ordinary and infinite. She sat beside Daniel's bed, brushing his hair as he slept. A real smile broke across her face, unburdened for the first time. She whispered, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting." Her words floated into the night, not as a plea, but as a vow. The scars remained, but so did the strength to rise again.